Psalms chapter 90 stands alone in the entire Psalter as a prayer attributed to Moses himself, the man of God who led Israel out of Egypt and received the divine law at Sinai. It is the oldest psalm in the collection, and it opens with the trembling yet confident address, "Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations." What follows is a meditation on the chasm between human transience and divine permanence, a contrast that gives the second verse its full weight. The surrounding verses speak of dust, of grass that withers by evening, of the passing of 1,000 years as though they were yesterday. Against this canvas of mortal fragility, Moses lifts his eyes to something utterly other. The verse reads, "Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting you are God." The grammatical address here is unambiguous. Moses speaks to a single divine person in the second person singular, "You are God." The Hebrew expression rendered "from everlasting to everlasting," meolam ve'ad olam, reaches in both directions, beyond all creaturely time. It does not point to a divine principle lurking behind creation, nor to a composite being whose internal relations require philosophical elaboration. It designates the one who simply is, without origin, without limit, the sole source from whom all things proceed. Before the mountains were brought forth, before the earth took its form, this one was already God. No other party is addressed, no other party is implied. This reading stands in direct continuity with the witness of the entire Hebrew scripture. The prophet Isaiah records the divine declaration, "I am the first and I am the last. Besides me there is no God." These are the words of the God of Israel, spoken to a people tempted toward every form of multiplied divinity. The Shema of Deuteronomy anchors Israelite faith in the same confession, "The Lord is one." Psalms chapter 90 does not contradict this inheritance, it gives it a temporal dimension. The oneness of God is not merely categorical but eternal, stretching before all time and beyond all time. Fausto Socinus understood this verse in precisely this way and drew from it a conclusion of considerable force. The God who is from everlasting to everlasting is the God who, out of his soul and supreme goodness, freely determined to redeem fallen humanity. This God needed no co-eternal partner in the work of creation or redemption. He sent his only begotten Son, born of a woman, into the world to make known his will. The sending presupposes a sender who precedes what is sent, Christ's beginning in time, his birth, his obedience unto death, his resurrection and exaltation to the right hand of the Father. All of this confirms that the eternal God of Psalms chapter 90 and the commissioned mediator, Jesus Christ, are two distinct beings, one uncreated and eternal, the other raised to unimaginable dignity precisely because he was not already divine by nature. The Trinitarian counter-reading acknowledges that Psalms chapter 90 verse 2 speaks of God's eternity, but claims that because the Son is co-eternal with the Father, this verse applies equally to all three divine persons. The Son, it is argued, is the eternal Word of John's prologue who existed before Abraham and before creation itself. On this view, "From everlasting to everlasting you are God" is addressed not to a single divine subject, but to a triune being whose inner relations are prior to time. Several difficulties press hard against this reading. The first is grammatical and contextual. The psalm addresses its subject in the singular. Moses, composing a prayer from within the tradition of Israelite monotheism, addressed the God of the covenant, the one whose name was revealed at the burning bush. To read into this singular address, a hidden Trinitarian structure, is to import a category foreign to the text and to the tradition from which it arose. The second difficulty is exegetical. Paul, writing to the Corinthians, draws a clear and deliberate distinction. "For us there is one God, the Father, from whom are all things." The Father alone bears the title of the one God. The Son holds a distinct though supremely honored relation to that one God. Christ himself, in the prayer recorded by John, calls his Father the only true God, distinguishing him clearly from the Christ who has been sent into the world. These texts do not strain under the Socinian reading, they confirm it. The third difficulty concerns the nature of Christ's exaltation. If the Son were co-eternal God by nature, his resurrection and enthronement would add nothing to what he already possessed. Yet Scripture consistently presents these events as a reward for his obedience, a conferral of authority that was not previously held. Matthew records Christ's own words, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to him." Given implies reception. Reception implies a giver who possesses prior authority. That giver is the God of Psalms, chapter 90, eternal without qualification, the one to whom Moses prays and to whom all human beings remain finally accountable. Psalms chapter 90 verse 2 is not a verse about metaphysical complexity. It is a prayer of refuge offered to the sole eternal God, whose everlastingness is the ground of all human hope. The Socinian reading honors the singular address, the Hebrew idiom, the immediate context, and the consistent testimony of both testaments. It presents a God of supreme and uncaused goodness, before whom every creature stands in absolute dependence, and who precisely because he alone is eternal and sovereign, is worthy of the unreserved trust Moses places in him at the threshold of this ancient prayer. In closing, I want to encourage you, examine for yourself, search diligently, read the scriptures with an open and rational mind. Socinianism does not rest on tradition or church authority, but on the conviction that God's truth is rational, clear, and morally sublime. If this perspective has resonated with you and you wish to explore the biblical Unitarian view further, visit www.socinianismus.de for in-depth articles, studies, and reflections on central theological questions. If this video has been helpful, please support this work with a like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another contribution on the unity of God, the teaching of Jesus, and the rational interpretation of Scripture. Until the next video.